Welcome to the Cambridge University Press sponsored webinar, Flipping for Flippity. Jenny and I are so delighted this evening to have Stefanie Gigante back with us as our guest presenter. As you know, Stefanie has presented for us several times doing these webinars. She was also a presenter at our summer workshops last summer. She is a certified Google trainer and a peer trainer, and she's also a technology innovation specialist in her district. And she teaches at Ridgewood High School in New Jersey. We are recording this webinar, so you will be able to access it in a few days if you need to go back and review or revisit anything. And if you should happen to need a professional development certificate, if you will just contact us at clctraining@cambridge.org, we'll get that out to you ASAP. And Stefanie.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for such a warm welcome, Martha. It's a pleasure to be back. Thank you so much for all your exclamation points, Natalie. I'm so humbled to be teaching you. You are such an expert in your field. I mean, everybody here is wonderful. I've seen your names in all the Latin teacher groups on Facebook. So thank you all for allowing me to show one of my favorite tools. And hopefully you'll be able to take with you from tonight one or two useful things. I know that we are all very overwhelmed by our day-to-day existence. And so I know it's hard to learn something new, and it's hard to reinvent as often as we need to be reinventing these days. So I hope that I can provide some constructive solutions or ideas for you. And if you have any questions after the fact, I'm more than happy to email you and have a dialogue that goes beyond just this particular evening. So this is our winter webinar series, Flipping for Flippity. So I'm Stefanie Gigante. This is my email address. It'll be at the end of the presentation as well, so that you can take it down and contact me. So my first question is essentially, what do you want to make today? We could make a crossword puzzle. We can make a manipulative activity. We can make flashcards. We can do a Mad Lib activity. We can make a scavenger hunt, a quiz show, word search, bingo. And that's not all. We do have other options for things to make using Flippity that go beyond this initial wheel of options that I've given you. So I'm going to introduce you to one of my new best friends. Her name is Flippity, and she makes things so easy. So to get to Flippity, you're just going to go into your browser and you can type in flippity.net. I'm encouraging you to go ahead and try it while we are all together, and that way I can help you troubleshoot any sort of questions that you have, any challenges that you encounter, and that way you can at least also kind of walk through your first time on Flippity with somebody who can help guide you. So if you're looking at my screen, these are all the beautiful activities that you can make with Flippity. Everything that's here, every single activity is a template, which means you can pour all of your own specific content into that template and make it an activity that is completely and utterly yours, and completely and utterly for the needs of your students, or for an activity that you specifically want to do. And all of these things are in a framework that can be produced and used in an online manner. So there are a lot of options for you. The basic process, and I'm going to walk you through this in a much slower pace in just a few moments, is that you're going to look through the Flippity website, find an activity that you want. Any one of these can be used for an activity. Once you decide on an activity that you want to use, if you'd like to, you can click demo, and then demo will give you a demonstration, or a templated version of what it looks like. There are instructions that you could use separately. And then when you're ready to go, you're going to go ahead and click template. Now the template is going to open up a Google Sheet. The Google Sheet is automatically saved in your drive. And then you can start putting your data in, and I can show you how to do that. I will be showing you how to do that. And then you just publish it, and then it's available via a link, and that link is viable for, 5-10 years, really. I hope, at least. I mean, I've used old Flippity activities for a long time. I guess it's just however long Flippity exists as a software. I want to show you first some examples of what I've done with Flippity to help kind of get your brain sort of acclimated to think of what you can maybe do with Flippity. This is a word search that I made with stage 22 vocabulary. And there are words that are in all 4 primary directions. And what I've done is I've done a mix of Latin and English. So the English equivalent is down here, and then the Latin equivalent is up here. And that helps the students to balance both the definition as well as the word. You could do this with a vocabulary word and a derivative. You could use it with just Latin vocabulary words. You know, if you have elementary or middle school students, you could just have the Latin word here and the Latin word down here. And you can do it in whatever area that you want. And I can show you how to make one. I'm seeing a couple of questions come in. Oh, thanks, Natalie. So let's see here. What else can you make? Manipulatives. So this was brought to my attention in the fall, and I can't believe I didn't know that Flippity could do this, but now I can't get enough of it, and I do it all the time with my students. This is a manipulative document, and I can take these things and drag them around. This particular activity is one that I use with my AP class, and this comprises lots of little snippets for Caesar Book 1, the part that they have to read in English. So some of the broad strokes of what they have to read. And the students' objective was to rearrange them in their chronological order. Now, students could do that really however they imagine it. So they can, drag it all across like this, if that's the correct chronological order, and, kind of have like multiple rows. Or you could have students sort things into nouns and verbs and adjectives if you wanted to. You can change the color coding of the pattern, etc., etc. Once you have the manipulatives down, and I promise I will show you how to do this because I know this is like one of the coolest things that Flippity can do. In the lower right-hand corner, there's a picture of a gear, and the gear gives you options for how you see it. And right now, my background, you see this little picture of a picture? My background says white fridge. So with a fridge background or a fridge motif for a background, you could almost imagine this as magnetic poetry. Do you all remember magnetic poetry? It was like a big thing in the 90s. And we got some magnetic poetry. And, while my mom was cooking dinner, we would just like rearrange some of the words and just make your own like poem out of it. So you could totally do that with a bunch of Latin vocabulary. Just kind of do like a vocab dump from a few stages that you finished and have the students just, play around with some of the words just to get accustomed to using that vocabulary in a meaningful context. So white fridge kind of brings that idea of magnetic poetry to mind. If you click here, you actually have a bunch of different options for how this text gets portrayed. So there's a 2-column option. It automatically divides it for you. So again, if you're having students do a sort, you could tell them to split up the screen and then do the sort that way. Sometimes it's easier to have the line drawn down the middle and rather than expect students to sort of mentally divide the paper into 2. So there's a 2-column, 3-column, 4-column option. You could also do 2 rows that go, horizontally. You could do a grid of either 4 or 6 and have students, again, make connections and group things together. You could also make it into a Venn diagram, which is so cool, right? Like you could have a bunch of different, verbs, right? That are both subjunctive and indicative, but they all have similar cases, right? So these are all the same case, even though these are indicative and these are, tense rather, even though these are indicative and these are subjunctive. You could also put a really nice background on to make it wood grain, right? So that we're all operating around a mahogany executive board desk or something like that. Stainless steel, I guess, evokes the idea of a stainless steel fridge, which regrettably my stainless steel fridge is not magnetic, so I can't do magnetic poetry. And then there's a world one too. This one's a little busier, so make sure that what you're hoping for with your background. Sorry, I'm just answering a question in the chat. What does the teacher view as students' work look like? That's a great question. I can't see what the students are doing at all with any Flippity activity. So that's kind of something that you have to balance with your classroom management and what you want your students to be able to do. So what I've had my students do as an alternative to being able to like watch them is when they're done, I have them take a screenshot of their screen and then they submit their screenshot. So I can't see individual students. Well, I can't see them through Flippity. I could use it. We have a monitoring software in our district. So if a student is using a district managed device, I can watch them do anything that they happen to be working on between the hours of 7 and 3. But I can't specifically go through Flippity. So that's why, and we'll talk a little bit later about like what to do once you have an activity and how to have them like submitted the right way. I do want to say too, as far as accountability goes, sometimes we get worried that students are like working together and possibly, cribbing it off of each other. Yeah, you could do it on Jamboard. I feel like, to be honest, I think it's a little more intense setup with Jamboard than it is with Flippity. So you kind of have to balance how much prep time you want to put into it versus how much you really want to watch them do it. On the note of student accountability, this link is live. I'm going to actually put it into the chat right now, because when you all load it onto your screen, you're going to see that when it loads for everybody here, it's going to look different on your screen. And when you get it, you're going to get it with the standard white fridge background. And you're going to see that when you receive all the pieces of the puzzle, they're all going to look different than my version did. So there is a little bit of individuality that goes into Flippity. And I think that that's helpful to make sure that students are doing their own work, at least, even though you can't necessarily see or watch them as they're doing an activity with it. With the manipulatives, if a student realizes, oh, I'm in too deep, I did this the wrong way, I started sorting, nouns and adjectives in the wrong place or something like that, you can always reset the pieces with this little arrow that's down here. I'm back down in the lower right-hand corner of my screen. And the students have all these options too. So the students will change their own background, and you can just kind of tell them, I want you to use this background for this activity. So on that note, I'm going to show you another example of manipulatives and how I used it in a very different way. So in this manipulative activity, if you notice, it loads on this white screen. This was a participle sorting activity that my students did in stage 22 after they had learned the perfect active participle. So now they had 3 participles under their belt, and it was a question of what the participle looks like and feels like, etc. So what I had them do is if you can see the lower right-hand corner of my screen, when I went to settings, I showed them how to do this too, but I required that they put it into a 3-column format. But interestingly, I was able to manipulate my template so that they can't do a lot of the other ones. See, Venn diagram is not an option for them here. The 8 grid is not an option for them here. So they really only had a choice of either 3 rows or they had a choice of 3 columns. So that helps them to sort of know, like, I want this in 3 different columns of activity, if you will. So then I had them, just drag and drop and, make some participle sorting stuff. You can mess around with color too. So you saw that on the previous manipulative that I shared, that everything was a different color. I made it here so that the participles themselves were blue and then the English translation was green. Because I wanted them to kind of remember what was English and what was Latin, so what they had to account for. In this particular activity, I actually have extra translations because I wanted them to be able to discern what the relationship is between a participle and its translation. So getting back to what we were talking about before with the idea of, like, how do students submit this? When I gave my students this specific manipulative activity, I gave it to them as a homework assignment. I said, okay, screenshot it when you're done. Now, I really like screenshots as a mode of submitting an assignment, mostly because I know that each student is submitting his or her own screenshot because they all have their respective tabs open. I see all of their individual bookmarks and whatever else they have going on. I can see that each person's screen is different. So I know that each person worked independently for the most part. I mean, I guess they could have been calling their friend while they were doing it. Can you have them do screencasts? Yes, Nora, I was just about to get to that too, about like how they would be able to do it. I'm actually having my students do something else, which I'll show you in a moment. But yeah, you could definitely just have students take a quick screencast of themselves doing the activity. Yeah. So, I mean, I like screenshots with the Elevate activities too. So you could just do the screenshot of them afterwards. So what I did, I took this one step further. And after they sorted it, because I feel like this is an important part of the early stages of book 3, so they did this assignment from Monday to Tuesday. And then from Tuesday to Wednesday, they had a different homework assignment. And it was like a 5-minute homework assignment. And in their new homework assignment, I put an activity on Flipgrid. I know that we're not talking about Flipgrid tonight, but Flipgrid is a software tool that students can record themselves. And I use it a lot for reflection activities, which is what I wanted them to do here. So I had them do a Flipgrid, and on the Flipgrid software, I put an attachment, and that attachment was a screenshot of the answer key, essentially. So I did my own sort. I made sure everything looked nice. I took my own screenshot, and then I attached the screenshot to a different assignment. So they had to search for it a little bit, but then I wanted them to walk me through, like, which ones did you have in the right place? Which ones did you have in the wrong place? Which ones are you confident about? You know, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one of the ways that you could use manipulatives. One of my English teacher colleagues was thinking about using manipulatives for the parts of an essay. She really wanted to have students be able to identify like hypothesis and things like that. So extrapolating that even further, you could use a manipulative activity for building essay skills in like Latin 4 or 5, or, you know, just upper level Latin in general, where you have to develop that skill of, you know, text-based analysis. So, you know, here's a point, like drag some text to whatever it is. With that said, you can't customize the background. You can customize which backgrounds they see, which I told you I had done here, but you can't put, and I would love to be able to do this. You can't put your own picture background as the background for manipulative. So I've often thought maybe one day, if Flippity evolves a little bit, I would love for them to have the ability to put your own background in. And that way you could put in the text of a story or something like that. And then you could have little pieces of translation that you could have them match up to it or something like that. So anyway, that's just musings from, you know, my little brain. Can you save it as a Google drawing, publish that link, and then add that link to the background page? I don't think you can change the background at all beyond the options that they give you. I'm happy to look through the template with you later, but I'm pretty sure that Flippity is particular about what you can use as the background. And I'm going to show you with Flippity, you can customize just about everything in every other department. So it's not something that I miss except in manipulative format, because I mean, like, I understand the basic gist of like putting an image as the background. It's just a question of what Flippity will accept or display as part of their background, if that makes any sense. Okay, so I want to show you more things because I've done more things with it. This is something that my students are using in class coincidentally tomorrow. We're reviewing old verb tenses in advance of learning the subjunctive. And so what I did was I created a bunch of verb forms and translations, and it's a matching game. So let's see here. I'm trying to find a match with relative alacrity. Of course I can't, right? Okay, here, so here's a match. She or he said, Dixon. Yeah, I just couldn't find it. Oh, it said it. So then once I get the match, see it's green, and then I click it and it goes away, which is pretty cool. And I know it's like a basic match game, right? But it helps the students to sort of like, okay, I have this bombas here. I need to have a translation of was or were. Okay, well, let me see if I can find it. Flippity is kind of amazing. So Flippity also has a timer so that I'm having my students set a timer and start it when they start working. And then they can, oh, see, it reads it to you too. Isn't that so cool? And then you can, stop the timer, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to mute the sound for right now. And then, again, if you feel like you're kind of overwhelmed by your options, you can go ahead and reload the whole thing. And remember, every time that any student clicks this link, it'll refresh for them in their own, like personalized setting. So here you go. I will share this, whoops, with all of you. And that way you can kind of play around too. And then, there are options that in the memory game, you could have, you can have just the backs of cards. So what you could do is you could, again, thinking of like lower levels, elementary or middle school, you could have picture flashcards or picture words that go with a vocab word. As you're talking about the Roman family or something like that, you could have a picture of a father and then match that to the word pater so that, you kind of meet them where they are too. So let's see here. What else can I show you? Oh, I'm going to show you. Well, I'm going to wait for board game for a second. This is OG Flippity for me. Oh, no, not this one. Sorry. So this is a really, really cool thing. I actually posted one to the Facebook group a couple months ago because I thought it was just so cool. So we get amazing resources from Cambridge Latin course. They give us so many cool things that are like, workbook activities. And then, here we are in this pandemic and we can't really, you can't copy them and like distribute them, right? But Cambridge has a ton of activities where they have like these words in columns and then they want the students to make their own sentences with it and then translate it. And then those sentences can be silly sentences, they can be random sentences, etc. So I made this into a randomizer and it looks like, I don't know, it looks like maybe like a slot machine or something like that. Just spin all the wheels and boom, now my students have a sentence to translate and it changes it up. But I'm using the same, 5 different cum clauses and the same 5 completion of main clauses, the same 5 subjects. So there's a lot of repetition for the students. And what I do is I just kind of I go through it and, one by one, each one comes up to the podium, if you will. I, do the randomizer, they get a sentence and then away they go. Now, this can be done in a couple of different ways. I did this cold a couple of days ago. I encourage them to use a dictionary, but I've also done it where I've taken all the vocabulary words, I put it into a Quizlet beforehand, and I said, okay, go study these words for like 6 minutes because I don't want you struggling with vocab here. I want you to understand the cum clause part of the deal. But then you can just keep randomizing this all day long. And one of the things I like about the randomizer site too, is that once it randomizes the sentence, it puts the whole sentence up here so that if the kid can't see the contrast of the color background, that's okay. And then you can also kind of like pick and choose what columns you want. I want to remove the subjects from the wheel. I just want them to focus on the cum clauses. Or maybe they're really having a hard time with the subjunctive cum clauses. So, okay, I just want you to focus on the subject and the main clause. And then you can spin just this wheel, or you could spin just this wheel. And here you can kind of just move up like, oh no, I really wanted the omina sentence or the puellam sentence, right? And then you can kind of customize it. So that's kind of a fun thing too. And you could also make this into a screencast opportunity for the students where you say, okay, I want you to practice cum clauses. Here's the randomizer. Film yourself where you click this thing 3 times and translate the sentence just orally. Like, I just want to hear what you can do with it. And that way you don't have to specifically sit there and write up you know, 4 or 5 different variations of 4 or 5 different sentences for each student, right? You can kind of get Flippity to do it for you. And because Flippity operates on a template, I literally just copied and pasted this from the Cambridge, the workbook stuff. Okay, oh, so this is OG Flippity, the first thing I ever used Flippity for. That, if you'll notice, I have a little folder on my bookmark bar because I use Flippity so frequently. So I have this random name picker. It's fabulous. All I do is spin it and it gives me a random name. And then I don't have to keep like calling on them or figuring out like, you know, where are you in the meet? I just call your name and you need to like respond. You could also do it as a lineup because, you know, sometimes when you're in a class, you can kind of look around, you can see who's ready, you can see who's got their homework out, stuff like that. I don't know. I can only see a face on a screen. And so I hope that everybody has their materials, and the expectation at, you know, depending on your lesson and where you are and what you're doing is I want everybody to participate at some point. But sometimes there's a lot of stress for the students involved in like being on camera or being caught off guard where, you know, where they're going to the bathroom or while their dog is barking or something like that. So I'll do a name lineup so that they know, okay, well, it's not my turn for like 7 people. I have an opportunity now to go and do my business in the bathroom and then come back before it's my turn. And then you could also just use this to quickly organize them into groups. You can organize them into teams. You can, I mean, I was going to say create a seating chart, but let's face it, we're all in some degree of virtual. Seating charts are pretty much non-existent this year. And then there are more options too. And look at this, isn't Flippity wonderful? I can send my attendance list here to manipulatives. It opens it up in a new window and I can organize kids in whatever fashion I want to. You know, I could have anything, I could do anything I want with the same information. I could also send this to a tournament bracket, which is one of the regular template options for Flippity. Here's a tournament bracket. And now I say, okay, well, in the first round, you know, Gabby A has a bye, but Ava's going to go against Sam and Gabby's going to go against the winner of that one. So there are a bunch of really cool things that you can do. You thought it was just a bunch of names. Haha, there's more. Okay, what else can I show you? We did the name picker. Okay, game show. Check this out, folks. It's Jeopardy. Done. And you know what I love about the Flippity game show thing? It keeps score for you. I really, I loathe that in a regular classroom environment, whenever you're playing Jeopardy, either you have to keep score, and then that takes away from the amount of time that you're like reading questions. You have to figure out which team got it correct. You have to figure out which team got it incorrect. You have to do all your math, right? It's just kind of a detractor to the overall experience. This keeps your score for you. You can customize the names of the teams. So maybe this is, you know, Jacob's team. Maybe this is, you could have like a boys versus girls situation if you really wanted to. Or you could have, I don't know, you could have your hybrid A versus hybrid B if they're all, you know, on the call at the same time. If you want more teams, just hit the plus. If you want fewer teams, just hit the minus. And then it operates in the same way to Jeopardy, but again, it's all like pre-built. So nouns and their endings for 100, the kids, you know, they feel like they're on Jeopardy. It's pretty cool. So here's the thing, what's the case that's, right? You all know the answer to this one. So you can do it in 2 ways. Here's the answer. Let's say Jacob's team got it correct. All I have to do is click check mark, and it gives a sound effect too. If somebody else has rung in beforehand and got the answer incorrect, I can do that. And then once I click out of the question itself, it negotiates the score for me. And on the board, this is circled in red. So I know that it's Jacob's team who got it correct. And if no team answers it correctly, then the question stays gray, but then it's grayed out. Because that's another big thing for Jeopardy, right? When you're in the classroom, it's so hard to remember which ones the kids have already chosen and stuff. So it's hard, but this you can customize with anything that you want. And then this here, this omega icon, this is the final Jeopardy thing. And a team can wager as much as they want. And then you can, you know, score it accordingly. So as far as using Flippity for Jeopardy, it definitely works to do it virtually. I've done it a few times virtually. One of the things to keep in mind, and if you've done Kurtamen in a virtual environment, is a little bit easier for you to adapt to this. But if you haven't, I think the easiest way to do this is that you use the chat of whatever video conferencing software you're using. And everybody can answer the questions from whatever respective team. But what I have them write the word answer into the chat, but don't hit enter. And then as soon as they know the answer, then they hit enter. But then that allows me the opportunity to view it as objectively as possible because it's just coming in through the chat. It's not a perfect system because there's going to be lag time because we're all virtual. So we're all, excuse me, my Wi-Fi receives it perhaps at a different time than their Wi-Fi sent it. So it's not a perfect system, but it does help you to figure out who answered it first because there's no hand raising, right? And let's be honest, if we try to rely on hand raising, it'd be really hard to see when you're just looking at tiled screens. Excuse me, if you do that option and you're using it in the chat, I always put in the question number first, whether it's just question 100, whatever, or just put in like Magistra or something like that. And that way you create a barrier so that you're not confusing the last rounds of answers versus this question's answers. Just a quick little, best practice thing for you. Okay, and then here is a, I say piece de resistance. This one probably takes, yes, I've heard of Buzzin. It's an online buzzer system. Yes, I've heard of that. We used it, it's a long story, but I played Family Feud in like a group setting. Yeah, buzzing in first definitely causes its own problems for sure. Excuse me. So this took me, I think out of any Flippity activity I've ever done, this one takes the longest. But it's a board game, which means it's fun, which means ultimately it's worth it. I didn't realize play Factal would be an option. So thank you for sharing. So this is a board game that you could play. Excuse me.
Apologies.
Oh my goodness.
I couldn't hear what you said.
Sorry, I was coughing and Siri thought I was saying something to her. It was not. I made this activity about Roman travel. So that's why you see a bunch of pictures about Roman roads. And that's why my start area is a chariot and my end area is the Golden Mile. But you can customize your start and end area with any images that you want. You can make all of these squares that are on your board, you can make them all images if you want. And the basic gist is, if I'm this icon, right, I start here, I go down here and I roll the die. Usually there's a sound effect. So I get to move 4 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Nothing happens to me. So let's see here. Orange, you get to go. Here's a 1. And the 1 takes you to this. And there's an informational thing here. This one just says move forward 6 spaces. So you can move forward 6 spaces. Now you could just cut it off there and say, okay, well, that's your turn. You did the thing. But some of them give you the option of, excuse me, drawing a card, which are here. So what tense is desk condicit? Move forward 5 spaces for a correct answer. So then the kid answers whatever the answer would be. Click to check the answer. Okay, well, I got that right. So now I can move forward 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, excuse me, this one's a little tougher only because, I'm playing it right now. Even if I were to send the link to you right now, your board will end up differently and you're going to be moving your own pieces on it. So you'd have to have a situation where like you send one link to a breakout room on Zoom or Google Meet, and you have all of the kids just kind of moving through the one player. So like the one player moves all of the game pieces around the board, draws the cards for them, rolls the die for them, etc. So there's a little bit of something that's kind of lost in an element like this. And moving forward in the lovely school year of 2021, 2022, when things hopefully become a lot more normal for us, you could have a situation in the classroom where you're sharing a resource I mean, sharing like a Chromebook. So you have 3 kids on one Chromebook all playing the board game. You could do it that way. But as of right now, obviously we're not sharing anything with anyone. So I will say that out of anything I've ever created with Flippity, this took by far the most time, but it looks really impressive when you have this available to them. So just, you know, again, you kind of have to weigh the time that you have to put into the, you know, to the activity to plan it versus what you're really going to get out of it. Okay, so I'm going to have you watch this process with me now. I really, really, really want you to stop me if I'm going too quickly. And I want you to stop me and ask whatever questions you want, because I am yours for the evening here. So what would you like to create? Let's start there. I could create anything right now. Any ideas? Okay. Oh, here we go. Who buzzed in first?
We'll go to scavenger hunt.
Scavenger hunt. I like it. All right.
We have scavenger hunt.
So scavenger hunt is almost like doing a breakout EDU activity. So if you've seen any of those breakout EDU posts, it's kind of like finding a bunch of things. So let's go ahead. We could first go to the demo, see what it looks like when it's done. Click a lock to get started. What has keys but no locks, space but no room? You can enter but you can't exit. I don't know the answer to this question. Florida? What's that?
Keyboard. A number of people have said keyboards, and I said it too.
Ah, yes. Oh, well, there you go. We unlocked the lock. And then we go back. So then essentially you get, you know, to lock 8, I suppose. But I guess with this, you don't have to do it sequentially, which is great. So let's say, all right, I got the gist. I'm good to go. So now you go back to the Flippity website and you click template. When you click template, it is automatically going to ask you, would you like to make a copy of it? The answer is always yes. I mean, really, that's the only answer you can give, but the answer here is yes, make a copy. Anything that you do with Flippity makes it into a Google Sheet. Okay, so you should have a Google Drive going into it, but I think most people do at this point. Even if you don't use it for your work life, you at least probably have it at your available to you. One thing, and I mentioned this later on in the presentation, one thing I highly, highly recommend is that with any Flippity activity, as soon as you make a copy of that template, rename it with whatever you're going to do, because it's going to get lost in your drive and you're going to have, which I tend to have too. I have this big list of documents in my drive called copyoflippity.net, copyoflippity.net, because I don't remember to name it in a timely manner. So you could say Unit 1 review game. Because it's a Google Doc, you can change it at any time. So here's our clue. You could give a hint. The hint could be an image, or it could be, as here, a link. Keep in mind that if you want Flippity to use a specific image or a link, they use double brackets in their notation. That's just the way that it's coded. So, you know, who was the girlfriend of Grumio? You could give a hint to take a picture if you wanted to, like a screenshot from the thing. And then, of course, the answer is the lovely Papaya. So the basic rule of a template is don't touch blue. The blue is lava. Anything that's in a blue cell is property of Flippity. Flippity needs it to stay where it is in order for Flippity to do what it needs to do. So I can edit the text anywhere else per the cues that they give me, but I can never, ever, ever edit the stuff that's in blue. It's a pretty easy rule to follow once you get used to it. Let's see here. What tense is Amawit? The answer would be perfect. What is Kaikilius's job? Oh, well, you could show like a coin, a denarius or something like that. He is a banker. So as you're going through, you can put in all your information. I'm not going to necessarily do the whole scavenger hunt for you here. The basic process, as I had described on one of the earlier slides, is that you open up the template, save it, put in all of your data, as much data as you want. If you look down here, there are some options that you could use too. Always pay attention to the options tab, but also know that, again, we're in a pandemic. It is totally okay to just use the options that they give you and not put a second thought into it. Do you want the answers to be case sensitive? Probably not. Well, it depends on your game, I suppose. Do you want the locks to be sequential? Here it says no, but I could make them yes, so that I could make it so that you have to answer question or lock number 1 before you get to lock number 2, and so on and so forth. Do you want to randomize? So if I have 8 clues or 8 locks, do you want them to appear randomly, or do you want them to be sequential so that they increase in their difficulty throughout the game? So you can kind of, play around with that. You can also customize the start text. You could write this entirely in Latin if you wanted to. You could change, so there, as you saw with the clues, there was an option for a hint. Here is like a moment to pause, like, are you sure you want a hint? You could write that in Latin. You could write some sort of like, exclamatory sentence, or you could give the hint or give 2 versions of the hint or something like that. What text do you want it to display when the students are done? Here I might write Yugapai. Don't worry about email address, name prompt, email confirmation. So I guess this one tracks student progress. So that is better than manipulatives from that standpoint. Okay, let's assume we've got our settings done. We've got our clues done, our hints done. Everything is good to go. You can't preview it until you do the following. File, publish to the web. Don't get worried though, because I assure you, when we publish it to the web, it's not a document that is searchable and findable by anybody else. It's just that what Flippity needs you to do from its software standpoint is that it needs you to essentially give up just enough ownership of the document for Flippity's software to sort of like reach in and pull the data out in order to make it into that fun activity. So are you sure you want to publish? Absolutely. And now that's it. That's all you have to do. You just have to publish it, and then you can close your window. Now, in order to get this game to a student, you go to the green tab down here that says get the link here. And when you get the link here, you click in this box and boom, now I have a scavenger hunt. And I selected sequential, which is why all these locks are not clickable, right? When we were doing our demo, they were all clickable. They were all red. We could have done 6 before we did 1 if we really wanted to. Here in the one that we made with our specific content, we made it sequential, which is why the red one is the only option for us. Okay. So let's see here. That was scavenger hunt. Someone had, Nora had said crossword puzzle. Here's crossword puzzle. I'm just going to open the template right away. Yes, I definitely want to make a copy of the template. I'm going to close some of my other tabs real fast just to make my computer run a little faster. So this is the area where you write in the word that you want the students to find in the crossword puzzle, and then the clue that you want them to use to get to that. So again, you could use this for a grammatical concept if you wanted to. If you're in stage the one or 8, maybe the one that teaches perfect versus imperfect, you could have, perfect tense verbs here, portawit, and then the clue is, she carried. Then you could have porta bot, and then, she was carrying, and so on and so forth. Let's see here. I'm trying to think of other ones, other vocab from that stage. Surrogate. Oh, I should have done the perfect. I forgot the point of this. Surrexit. He got up versus surrogate bot. He was getting up. So you just go about, putting whatever data you want. You can make the data go all the way down the page if you really want to. You can make the crossword puzzle as long as you really want to. Once you're done with all of your words and your clues, again, go up to File, Publish to the Web, Publish, OK, and then get the link here. And then this is the link that you click, and voila, as they say. It has a bunch of clues because it has the other ones that were already there before we got there. So I was showing you a word search before, and now here's a crossword puzzle. Now you might be thinking, okay, well, how exactly do the kids get to solve this, right? There is an answer key available. So I wouldn't necessarily give them the link for a crossword puzzle or a word search. Hold on, there's a quick question in the chat. How do you have your students work on a Flippity activity individually? Yes, I will either email the link or post it as an assignment on Classroom. So that's how I get the information to them, except in the situation of a crossword puzzle or a word search. In the situation of a crossword puzzle or a word search, I think the easier way actually is printing it, but not actually printing it. I know, you're like, I thought you just said you don't want us to print. I got it. Save it as a PDF though. And then you get it to them as a PDF, and then you can use your favorite PDF software, whether it's Kami or DocHub or something like that, and the kids can write in the words like that. Now, moving forward to the halcyon days of 2022, you should be able to just print this out in a classroom and use it that way. But for right now, this is kind of our limitation. Oops. Crossword Labs also lets the kids type in their answer. Yeah, okay, and then they can screenshot it too. Good, yeah, I mean, I haven't used Crossword Labs, so I'm not really sure how much you can customize the words and the clues. I would assume it's pretty, user-friendly in the same way as Flippity is. So that's the answer key. You can reshape it any way you want. All right, let's take a moment to do a whatchamacallit, manipulative here. Let's make a copy. So the manipulatives thing has a touch more complication to it. Not complication because it's complicated, but complication because there's another wrinkle, and the wrinkle is backgrounds. The terms that they have in their demo are all office-oriented terms. They have all these like themes in their templates that they give you. Here, this is just a list of the terms. These are the only ones right now that have color behind them. But what you can do is just copy this and just paste it through so that you don't have to keep typing purple in, every 5 spaces. Just do that. But you could also, as I said, like what I did with the participle thing, you can customize it too, so that you have verbs that are in red and nouns that are in blue or something like that, that helps you to kind of figure it out. As far as backgrounds go, so these are the background options. Now, I suppose it might be possible to do another image that's not a Flippity image. Let's try it, shall we? Let's see if we can conquer our one concern about Flippity. So let's do Roman Roads, Creative Commons, make sure the image is fair use. So this is copy image address. Oops, where's my template? There you are, okay. Let's try it. We'll see what happens. Maybe I solved my own problem. Sometimes talking about it out loud helps, right? Now, I'm going to show you something quickly. I'm actually not going to do this the right way because I want to show you, let's say you get done putting all your information in and you forget the publishing step. If you go to get the link here, number one, I should tell you that right here in red, it does say don't forget to publish, but sometimes you forget to publish because we have a million things on our minds and we're human. So if I go ahead and click it, it's going to say, sorry, Flippity is having trouble loading the spreadsheet. Common causes, it's not published. So try publishing it first. One quick note to add, once I publish this to the web and make it available for Flippity, anytime I make a change to the data that's in the template, it automatically is reflected when I click the link. If I have this link up in the next tab though, and I edit my data within the template, it won't automatically update within the game itself or within the activity itself. But if I close the activity and then I just click the link again, the link stays the same. It just has the updated version of the data behind it. Does that make sense? Okay, let me know if it doesn't. So I went ahead and I published it. This is our office thing. Let's see if we can do. Oh my gosh, you can use your own picture. Okay, well, there you go. Whole new world we have now. I made everything super colorful. You can probably only use one image at a time though. So what happens here is that you can see it's actually a really grainy stretch for the picture. But I mean, depending on the picture, you could really go to town with this and you could manipulate it in a number of different ways. You could use this even as an art analysis type of assignment. I do an art analysis with my Latin 4 students where they look at pictures of Daedalus and Icarus and they pair text from the poem to the parts of the picture. So you could do that here where you put the picture or the painting as the background and then all of the words here are the individual words from, you know, the 5-line segment or something like that that it happens to represent. Yes, Pompeii map, forum ID. Yeah, you could do a lot of things. Yes, label a Roman soldier. Yes, you could definitely have them do that. The possibilities are now skyrocketing. For manipulatives alone, much less Flippity as a whole. Photo of all the characters. Yes, label them with descriptions. That's a great suggestion.
Even if I can't spell descriptions.
So yeah, I mean, there are other ways that you could do this too, where you have the characters from Unit 1, and maybe you have like masculine and feminine adjectives, masculine and feminine versions of the same adjective. So laitos, laita, and then the kids have to match it up, and then you can use that as the platform for explaining, you know, the difference in gender agreement for adjectives. Identify devices in authentic text. Yeah, identify figures of speech. Yeah, I mean, here's a bunch of figures of speech terms. Here's a part of the poem. You know, see if you can identify where all these things are. I mean, we have just opened up an enormously helpful can of worms in your classroom. So I hope that your wheels are also turning as rapidly as mine are when you start to imagine the possibilities of what Flippity can bring to you. Now, again, you kind of want to make sure that the student's process of the work is as authentic as possible. So, you know, it depends on what you want to use it for and whether or not it's a class activity or, you know, a graded assignment or something like that, and then what you want to do. So just kind of have an idea of how you think the students could handle doing it on their own and, you know, what obstacles might come in their way. But really, Flippity is just browser based. So a kid could theoretically do manipulatives on his phone if his Chromebook were broken. There are a lot of these that they could do on their phone. I don't think that word search is one of them though. Other activities that I haven't really showed you that, you know, last few minutes, I'm going to let you know exist on Flippity. You could do Mad Libs. I know that Jocelyn Demuth, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, but I know that she has a bunch of Mad Libs, and Magistrula has a bunch of Mad Libs on her website. But these Mad Libs you can customize. So you could create Mad Libs with vocabulary sets from, you know, stages 4 through 7 or 10 through 13 or some 10 to 12, I guess. You know, there are a number of different things that you could do with Mad Libs. The Mad Libs thing works a little bit like the randomizer that I was showing you earlier, in that you have certain categories of words. I clicked make a copy and now it's idling. Doesn't it know? Okay. So there are, what is that, 6 different options for a Mad Lib story. You could create your own if you wanted to have it as an option for the students. And you could have your own that was based in stage 12. You know, you can almost write like a fan fiction version of the eruption of Vesuvius. Although, I mean, Mad Libs, we don't really want to have like fun with the eruption, but I guess you could do something else. So here they have, in brackets, they have male name, present participle, adjective, noun. You could definitely do the same thing depending on where you are in your text if the students are good about giving adjectives and stuff. You could write the entire story in Latin if you wanted to. You could write the entire story in English, but then drop Latin words into it. This is the template. This is what it would look like if you were to just see a quick demo of Mad Lib. So here's the accident. So here's male name, Caecilius, ambulans, laetus.
Helena. All right.
I'm sorry?
No, nothing. I was trying to help you out. Never mind.
Okay. Let's see here. Felix, Willa. I'm really just throwing totally random words out here.
Helena.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. Plural period of time. So some of these you might have to adjust, right? Like the kids might not know, sorry, duos dies. Show me my story. Here you go. One day, Caecilius was ambulans with his laetus canis. So you could have the kids kind of translate like funny stories. And then you could even have them make up their own Mad Lib stories. You could have them like create the framework for it and then, you know, put those in, and then the kids get to sort of have ownership over it. Oops, wrong one, sorry. The kids could have ownership over it, that there are, say, you know, 10 kids in your class, each one gets to write his or her own Mad Lib story, and then they get to see it. And they don't know that the story called The Trip was written by, you know, Amos, and they don't know that the test was written by Ginny. They just know that these are cool stories that they can put words into. So you could have students on both the creation end as well as the activity end of creating a Mad Libs assignment. Another interesting, oh, sorry, here's the template thing. This fun with words thing, this came up in the name randomizer thing. I don't know if you saw it come up, but you could create, as you can see here, like interesting patterns, like whatchamacallit, Scrabble tiles for a name, or blocks, building blocks for a name. Now, this probably isn't impressive unto itself as Latin teachers. However, if you are creating like a breakout EDU kind of activity where you want to have like coded answers, you could use something like this. So with the Scrabble tiles, Hermione's name is not just Hermione, it's, you know, the H is worth 3 and the E is worth 1 and the R is worth 1. So you might have to like add up the value of her name, and then that would be the answer to a breakout EDU question or a scavenger hunt question. So you can use these, you know, customizable things for other activities that supersede just the Flippity environment. Progress indicator and badges, which is around here somewhere. This might help you build proficiency in your students too. You give students a series of tasks And then once they feel like they've mastered that task, then you can put the data into the progress indicator, and the kids can kind of watch their line increase throughout the year. So if you wanted to, develop not necessarily a self-paced curriculum, but, at the end of every quiz or test or something like that, the student can indicate, oh yes, I feel like I've really mastered the members of the family, or the downtown Pompeii, or whatever it is. Yeah, you could definitely pair that with the self-assessments for sure. Absolutely, Barry. To kind of go in and say, here's a self-assessment. If you can score yourself at 10 out of 20 or more, show me that, and I'll update your progress in the progress indicator. There's a hangman style activity. It's called Flippity Snowman, so it's got kind of like a cute edge to it. This is the badge tracker. It's got a similar idea to the progress, or the progress indicators that was down here. Bingo, timelines, you name it, Flippity's got it, my friends. So I think that's all our time for today.
Stephanie, I have a question for you. How
Sure.
often do you use these things? I mean, do you find that once you've gotten good at something, it becomes part of a fairly common part of your curriculum?
Yeah, I would say, I started out using the Flippity name picker almost every day of every class. And then I started getting much deeper into the Flippity environment. And I would say I use at least one Flippity activity every week, of a variety of different kinds.
Yeah, boy, I know you showed us this quite some time ago and had no idea that it had so many different functions now. I mean, this is great. Very, very informative. And thank you for going through so many different ones and showing us how it all works.
Oh, my pleasure.
So before we go, we'd like to tell you guys that we're looking to put together a Saturday 2-hour workshop as kind of a refresher for people, a boost in the arm at this time of the year. We're looking at Saturday, January 30th from noon to 2 Eastern time. We're thinking maybe of having one group be Unit 1, 2, one be Unit 3, 4, and then maybe just a general place for questions and issues. If you think you have any interest in that, would you just put a yes, no in the or yes in the chat box so we can get some idea?
Okay.
We bring you all coffee, except we can't. But
Oh,
that's
great.
kind of our theme. We give you a cup of coffee or tea or hot chocolate. Okay, well, we'll get that information out pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you everybody for attending this evening. And as always, have a good evening. And I'm sure we'll see many of you next week when we have another webinar, Classic Classics.